Hello, I am so happy to have Madeline from Balance Bay Nutrition with me. Madeline, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Madeline and I run Balanced Bay Equine Nutrition Consulting. So I am a equine nutritionist. I am based in Ontario, Canada, but I do deal with horses across North America and globally as well. So a lot of remote clients in there too. And yeah, primarily I really just help people feed their horses in an optimal way so we can improve equine well-being.
I use the word optimal for like my stuff too. It's such a like a perfect word because it's not like I just like how it covers everything. It's like as good as it can be.
Yeah,
My favorite
exactly.
word. I love it. And then I love that you're an independent consultant. What made you have that decision to kind of go off on your own versus joining a specific food company?
So when I was in, I guess, first year university, my mayor Piper, who is the absolute love of my life, which I'm sure most of us can relate to, was pretty seriously injured. So it ended up with her being on stall rest. And she was an easy keeper. So weight gain happened. And, that wasn't good for her injury and for her healing. And it seemed like no matter where I went, it was like, okay, well, we just have to switch her onto this brand or switch her onto this brand and oh, just feed her less. But she was also on stall rest and she was bored, and I didn't want her to go hungry. So I felt really frustrated by that. And at that point, I was like, there's got to be a better way. There has to be someone that can work one on one with the individual horse owner and the individual situation. And kind of apply scientifically backed strategies to help with all sorts of nutrition problems, whether it be easy keepers or harder keepers or metabolic issues, kind of all of the above. So that is really why I decided that I'm going to go into nutrition. When I finished my degree in equine management at Guelph, I pursued a master's degree in equine nutrition. And once I finished that, I was like, yep, I know exactly what I need to do because that's the service I so desperately needed when my mare was unwell.
And it's hard to find because like I've talked to lots of like brand specific like nutrition and like they know their products inside and out. They have a lot of like great knowledge base, but it's so nice to have that variety of okay, I really like this product from this company and this one from this one and just have a little bit more variety instead of being stuck in that one specific brand.
For sure. And like what I find too is just because one feed works best for one horse doesn't mean that's the best option for the next one. A lot of it also comes down to personal preference. I want my clients to feel great about what they feed their horses. So maybe they have brand preferences too. And yeah, we can totally work with all of that and get creative when it comes to designing these diet programs.
Cool. So I know one of the things that you talk about a lot and advocate for a lot is the process of breaking down hay analysis. Can you talk us through what that is and why that's important?
Yeah, so if you follow Balanced Bay on social media, you will see a lot about the importance of testing your hay and getting a hay analysis done. So the example I like to use is when you go to a feed store, everyone's really concerned about like the protein percentage on the concentrate that they're purchasing. However, when we think about volume wise of what our horse eats, maybe they're getting a couple scoops, say maybe a kilogram of concentrate a day. Whereas they're eating a whole lot more hay, but a lot of the times you have no idea what the protein content is in your hay. So when we're concerned about diet and making sure we're giving our horses what they need, if you don't have a hay analysis, you're missing 90% of the picture. So it can be difficult. I do balance diets that, the hay changes every 2 weeks and testing isn't practical. However, in any case that the hay does primarily stay the same or that there's nutritional problems, hay testing is critical. It gives you information on calories, which is really important when we talk about those easy keepers and hard keepers. Your protein, it gives you insight into how digestible the hay is. So if you're seeing a lot of hay belly symptoms, maybe you have more indigestible fiber. And then, of course, like your minerals and sugars and whatnot as well.
And so on average, how often do the people that you work with get their hay tested?
I would say over 99% of my clients have their hay tested.
Cool.
It is only in like the situations where the hay truly does change all the time. Like even for clients that the hay changes every 3 months, we're still testing the hay.
That's awesome. I love that. And then do you find like you make like pretty significant changes when you like get those results like for each season almost, or it varies?
That's a really good question. So I would say for the most part, we aren't making major changes.
Yeah.
The valuable piece of having continual hay samples done so that you are always on top of making sure the diet remains optimal is, for example, you have a horse and they've been maintaining their weight really well. So then they are transitioning onto the 2024 hay. And all of a sudden, this hay is a lot lower in protein and energy than the 2023 hay. But it looks the same. Like if you're looking at it, you're like, oh, this hay looks pretty similar. Well, all of a sudden, then November, December rolls around, and I start getting calls. Oh my gosh, my horse has lost weight going into winter. Their top line is gone. But when we test hay, I can keep their overall diet the same. So
Yeah.
their overall protein intake can maintain the same, even though the hay is changing. So a lot of the times it's small changes in the diet to keep everything the same, really, what they've been doing well on. But if you don't have the hay tested, you're kind of always behind the ball on staying on top of the diet.
Right. Right. That's awesome. Are there many differences that you find when approaching nutrition for mares versus geldings, like specifically for like hormonal support for mares versus geldings might not need that as much?
I would say it does come up, but it's not super frequent. So I wouldn't say that like every diet I do for a mare, I'm including some sort of hormonal support.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to be individual. So there are mares that, yeah, struggle a bit more with their cycles, and oftentimes will opt for like a herbal support. A lot of people use raspberry leaves or chasteberry to help out with that. And the products that do help I find also vary. So a mare might not respond to one, whereas another mare has done really well on it.
Right.
And then I guess, yeah, in regards to that, I do also find there's lots of geldings that do need additional support in other ways. So just because they're a gelding doesn't mean they don't need anything added to their diet or that additional herbs aren't going to help them. It really comes down to your individual horse and their needs, really.
Mm-hmm. Cool. When I was talking to kind of like my equestrians in biz group and just getting any feedback in terms of anyone wanting specific questions and specific topics, the one that came up like 12 times was how do we manage and support senior horses? And I know that's going to be, again, varying a lot, but is there anything in particular you consider with senior horses?
Definitely. So yeah, feeding the senior horse is a huge topic. And I would say probably a common misconception is that just because a horse reaches a certain age means they should be on a senior feed.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely not the case. Generally, senior feeds are higher in protein or like they'll be extruded, so a little bit higher in digestibility or easier for the horse to digest. But the big things that I see with senior horses is we're dealing with compromised dentition and oftentimes Cushing's disease. It's so prevalent across senior horses and obviously really is tied back to nutrition. So, in terms of compromised dentition, the biggest piece of that is just making sure that's monitored, having your vet float their teeth on a regular schedule. And when you start to notice that they aren't as great at chewing their forage, maybe they're quitting a little bit, maybe they're losing weight, definitely consulting a nutritionist to make sure that you're still meeting their fiber requirement with either like a hay cube or pellet or a complete feed. I have many clients that their horses have no teeth and eat no hay. So we can work around it. It's fine. There's lots of options, but just recognizing it before it's a serious problem and they've lost a lot of weight and we're playing catch up.
Yeah.
It's way better to catch it in advance. And then, yeah, for metabolic issues, so specifically Cushing's disease or PPID is normally what we see in senior horses. And that often looks like You might end up with some laminitis. That is often, I would say, what encourages people to test for it is their horse will have a bout of laminitis. Or like muscle wasting is really common as well. That long, shaggy coat. So making sure you're monitoring for those symptoms and working closely with your vet to test if you do suspect it. If they are diagnosed with Cushing's disease, we're going to want to be really, really careful with starches and sugar in the diet, which is also a reason you need to have your hay tested. You can have the lowest sugar ration outside of the hay that you want, but if that hay is high in ethanol soluble carbohydrates, you're fighting a losing battle.
I was Cushing's was like the bane of my existence with my late gelding. It was just like I jumped down a rabbit hole of researching with it, and it was just shocking how much it affected like everything, his ability to heal a small scrape, the like his eye ulcers, like it just everything was affected, even though like we were super on top of managing it, it was still just so hard on his system.
It's so true. And so my gelding Finnegan, if you follow like the Friday with Finn blog, it's named after him. He's 29 roughly now, and he was diagnosed about 6 years ago with Cushing's. Obviously, I'm on top of the nutritional management, and so he's looking great and doing really well. But the biggest thing has been working closely with our vet to make sure he's medicated properly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it affects so much. Like he had recurring ulcers in his eye as well, which ended up he needed his eye removed. And so yeah, there's been so many things that it really is important to work closely with your vet. Like get the nutrition right for sure. That's a huge piece of management, but your vet needs to be very, very heavily involved in the medical management side.
Yeah, my vet and I are besties now. Hi, it's me. We have more things.
Yeah.
What are some of the things people should be considering when they're looking at the quality of supplements?
Supplements is another massive, massive topic, and everyone loves to talk about supplements. Which, yeah, we want to do what's best for our horses, so we often do fall for the fancy marketing because we're like, well, they're telling me this is going to be great for my horse. I obviously want my horse to have the best of everything. So sometimes the marketing will get you, and there might not be any science really to back up the product, which is scary.
Yeah.
But you don't have to prove efficacy of a product to have it on the market. And so you're really relying on trying to purchase from reputable companies and doing your own research. So before I purchase a supplement or recommend a supplement, I go and look at the active ingredients in that product. And if you head over to Google Scholar and type in the active ingredient and put the word horse or equine or whatnot, you'll end up getting research papers. And so this is what we call active ingredient research, not product research. But most of the time, there's not really a whole lot of product research out there on equine specific products. So when you look at those articles, you're looking at the, first of all, if there was benefit or not to feeding it, and the dosage. Because sometimes I'll see on supplement websites, they will be like, oh, this research, was on the same active ingredient and horses did fantastic. A great example, there's a study on spirulina that it was statistically significant for weight loss. However, the horses were fed 500 grams a day. No one's affording 500 grams of spirulina a day. That's just the reality.
I'm laughing because I literally read that.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Like, that's an awful lot. I
don't know how they got them to eat that much either, is the other thing. So yeah, there's a lot of like intricacies with that sometimes, yeah, working with a nutritionist who is up to date on the science will be able to weed through some of that for you.
Yeah.
The other really great resource is NASC, so the National Animal Supplement Council. It's like a little like yellow circle logo, but if you look it up on Google, they will actually have a list of companies that are part of their program. And those companies are held to, they have to comply with certain regulations through that NASC society. And basically, they are working on guaranteeing truth in labeling. So just because a product is on the NASC site doesn't mean it's going to work, but it means that what's on the label is what is in the bucket, which I know is the complete bare minimum, but that is where we are in
Yes.
terms of supplements.
Yeah, I find just talking, it's so interesting to me, like what people think is important, where I feel like when you're looking at supplements, it's kind of like picking shampoo from like the Shoppers Drug Mart aisle, where it's just like there's so many options and oh, that bottle's really shiny and looks pretty. And it's
Yeah.
hard to actually like step back and know what you should be looking at in terms of like the quality and does it actually work?
Yeah. And like in an ideal world, we would have product research on every supplement we're feeding our horse. There are companies that do have product research, and we should be using our money to vote and pay for science with purchasing from companies that do invest in research on their products. But yeah, some of the studies out there are terrifying. Dr. Scott Weiss, he's out of the University of Guelph, and in the early 2000s, he did a study on veterinary probiotics. I want to say it was a 2008 study. And I think it was like 4% of the products they looked at met label claims. Very, very low.
Right? And like that's
So, what are
concerning.
you feeding your horse if it's
Yeah.
not what's on the label of the product?
Yeah. No, it's, and I also found like anytime I would like message the company directly asking about any sort of like research or asking about like quality control, anything like that, it was very telling what companies didn't get back to me, what ones came back with like a little bit of a snarky remark, and then which ones were like, here's all the information we have. We're so happy you asked. And I was like, okay,
Yeah,
this makes me feel better, a little more transparent. And
that is a great way to go about it as well. If you're online and you're like, I don't really know how to find the research, but I'm interested in this product, if
yes,
you reach out to that company, they should be able to provide you with their research.
yes,
100%. And they should be thrilled that you're asking.
yes.
I personally love when clients have a million questions. It's like, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's get into the science. So, yeah, purchasing from companies that have a similar viewpoint and are transparent is really important.
And also harder to find than I was shocked
Yeah,
how
yeah,
many companies I would contact and like either again wouldn't hear from them or they would say, well, all the information is on the website. I'm like, all the information? Okay.
yeah. I've even had where like obviously I reach out to companies on a daily
Yes.
basis for my job, and I've had where it's like, okay, I need the calcium content of this product. And they're like, oh, well, it's herbal, so that's not how it works. And I was like, I can tell you the calcium content of hay.
Yes.
That's like, it's just plants too, but like, we need to know that.
Yes. This is
That should
important.
be public information.
Yes, it should.
Yeah.
What's one of the biggest takeaways you want clients to get from sessions with you?
So of course, every session I do, like it is an individual program for the horse. And, I call it the personal nutritionist program, which is like the yearly subscription because they basically are adding a nutritionist to their horse's care team. But the biggest takeaway I want clients to get from the session is to be curious and be interested in the things your professionals tell you to do with your horse. Ask questions and yeah, like take the time to like just like think about why. And I guess the other thing is don't at all be discouraged or worried about asking your questions, because if you're working with a professional who is passionate about what they do, they should be thrilled to chat with you for hours about the topic. So, yeah, always know that you know your horse best and you are their advocate when dealing with professionals, and you want to build a team around your horse that is there for you and your horse and supporting their well-being.
I love that so much because I with my late gelding, I went through a couple different practitioners for everything, farrier, blah blah. And now with my new mare, I feel like I have such a solid team to start her off right off the bat because I went through like asking questions and being kind of made to feel like I was annoying or like they're the professional, they know best, even though I'm sitting there being like, okay, but he's not doing well with this. And
Yeah.
it's hard
And
to find that.
Yeah, it is. And I think the biggest thing we all have to remember is that there's always more to learn with
Yes.
horses.
Yes.
Always. So if one thing's not working, yeah, let's try something else. Or maybe we're going to consult someone else in the field and involve them and get their expertise and knowledge too. So yeah, for sure, you know what is best with your horse and build a team of professionals to support that. But at the end of the day, you know your horse best.
Yes. And
Mhm.
it's okay. Like there's a way to break up with professionals that you don't burn the bridge. You don't like you most of the time, not always, but most of the time, like I like when people go and try a different practitioner than myself, like if they find someone who they jive with, like I want them to go with them. I want them to go with what's best. And I feel like I take that approach when I'm working with other professionals of you're really great, but this isn't working. And
Yeah,
I would hope that they would want me to find what's best for me and my horse too.
for sure. And like what I see a lot of is I get quite a mix of clients. So I have some clients that really want to keep it simple. They want to feed one thing that covers all the necessities. And that's great. That's a perfectly fine approach. We can make your horse an awesome program like that. Then I have other people that like, oh, I don't want anything that's like commercial or, a manufactured pellet. I do want to say mix everything up with hay cubes or whatever and kind of have that more individual ingredient approach. Also a completely fine approach that we can use and implement. Or some people only want to stick with herbal products. That's fine too. There are so many ways, and that's also what I mean when I say like I want you to feel great about what you feed your horse. And open communication is probably the biggest piece with that. Just telling me what you want, what you feel good about feeding, and then we will design a program that incorporates those preferences.
That's such a nice judgment-free way to come into it too, knowing that like I know this is weird, but this is how I like to do things, and to know that you'll be like, cool, like
Yeah, I had actually, I just saw her this week. She's a totally lovely client. And the first time I met with her, she was like, oh, and then I sprinkle her croutons on top. And I was like, pause, 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 pause. It's like, your horse is being fed croutons? And then they were not croutons. It was a pelleted feed that she was just sprinkling on top. But she was like, she likes that. I'm like, great, we're keeping the croutons.
yes. I had another client, she's at a do-it-herself barn right now, but she was asking if I knew of any like more like full service barns. And I was like, with all due respect, you're gonna have a really hard time with that because I've watched her like fill her hay nuts and she does like one flake of first cut, one flake of second cut, very specific. And I was like, as lovely as some of the barns are, I'm like, I don't really see anyone else doing that for you. You might have to stick with doing it yourself or compromise.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's hard. Any other comments, words of wisdom to finish up with? I know that always like adds so much pressure, but
I would say that if you are curious about your horse's nutrition, dive into it now rather than waiting for a problem to arise. With vitamin and mineral deficiencies, clinical symptoms often take years to develop. And by the point those symptoms develop, it's normally really, really serious.
Mhm.
So staying on top of it, getting curious, and yeah, being a fierce advocate for your horse. And yeah, just ask lots of questions always.
I love it. That's perfect. Thank you so much for joining. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, it was lovely to be on.